Atinishik, Nolandam Kwaikishik, Vishkins the Shinzi, Nahin and Onjiai. So that's how we would say who I am in Lanape language, where I'm registered and grew up for a part of my life, as you said earlier. That community is known as Moravian of the Thames, or Moravian Town, which is located in southwestern Ontario. But most importantly, where Tecumseh's native stand, if people know who that is, that's where my community was. Our people stood with him at that time. And yeah, I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm not gonna tell you what year. That's for a bonus question guess for all users, but that's where I was born. So I grew up, yes, in the big city, and then some of the res life as well. So that's a lot of my upbringing and who I am. And yeah, I'm a father, married, and have three amazing children and lots of nieces and nephews. And one younger sister biologically, and a whole bunch of other sisters and brothers throughout. So I guess, do you have questions?
Sure. So in your work with DOCFS, you do tons of amazing work with the community. You've done hunting camps, harvesting camps, fasting camps, and language camps as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about those and why you do those and why you find those rewarding?
Yeah, I mean, the work with Dakota Ojibwe Child Family Services it's a lot of, as in my role, coordination and trying to make sure people have what they need, meaning the appropriate resource people, appropriate knowledge. And so the way it works in the Dakota Ojibwe communities, and specifically working with Long Plain, Swan Lake, and Roseau River, which would be the Anishinaabe communities, meaning that's the language they speak. And so we give them, well, not they give us direction through their committees and elders on some of the activities that they would like to have. And so in most recent years in development, with Bill C-92 being passed as law, cultural continuity does fall under that, which previously, with the disconnect within the history, as we know, and a lot of us have experienced as children of residential school survivors or 60s scoop, the disconnect for language, and many of our children, too many or a lot of our children are still living in that system of child welfare, and of course, dependent on education, which is good, like the traditional education system. We go to school, public school, secondary, university. However, there is still gaps with learning about who we truly are as Anishinaabe or Indigenous people. And so with these camps, it is our best that we try to give voice for, and with our elders to pass on what it is that they know from each of their community. And it's really unique because each community is unique, and each have their own way of doing things, I guess you could say, and have their perspective and customs and protocols as well. So it's really interesting, and depending on what it is that they're able to hold on throughout all the history and disconnect, what memories that people are able to hold on to. So also part of my role is to try to understand what that is, and then hopefully reconnect it, strengthen it, and then share amongst each other. So you've named several camps, one being hunting camp, another is ice fishing camp, and regular like rod fishing camp. So I guess first of all, growing up fishing, just starting out with fishing in my community, I grew up fishing, so it's been a big part of my life since I don't know, it's always been part of my life. Every spring is a big fishing thing, so it's been part of my family, and then of course in our family we have hunters as well. But at that point, I wasn't one of the ones that was allowed to go hunting. I don't know. I was told to go to school, so I went to school, which is fine too. But I've seen it around. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just normal when you see a deer hanging in your front yard before going to school or something like that, or on the bus we see other cousins. They have a couple. It's like, so that's normal res life, I guess you could say. I can't do that. I live in a city, so I can't necessarily do that here. I might have some phone calls and some neighbors saying what's going on. But that's what I could say. So for me, it's a kind of a normal thing with the hunting and fishing camps, and specifically, fishing is a lot of my experience. And to be able to provide that, for young people to know that they can do that. And of course, growing up, we've had several, I don't want to say battles, but, I think it's really important that young people know their rights as Indigenous people, as First Peoples of this land, to our territories, and not feel shamed or, some kind of way of going to harvest animals to feed their family, because that's what we were given to do pre-Canada, and that's something we always try to make sure our children and people know. So it's not necessarily the governments that gave us right to do these things. It is our right as given in our creation story, which kind of ties into other things, but just we always want to make sure that they know that. And so within that, just, fishing and doing those things, we try to educate, and for sure we try to let our young people know the names of the species in their language. So that's kind of where language comes in as well. But it's a whole skill development. I don't know how to explain it, but it's not just go get something and stand out there and they're waiting for you. Okay, take me home with you. It doesn't work like that. So it's a lot of education, and so we are fortunate enough to have uncles to teach us some of these things. Just fishing, I guess, say growing up. The way we grow up with fish in our community is called dip netting. It's very unique to our tribe and how we do things. But in modern times, we have boats, and we use electronics too. We're not like going back to hardcore old days, but to go get the fish on a boat with a fishing rod and things like that is fine too. And so that's, I grew up fishing and knowing how to do that. And then hunting, my cousins do that, we'll be around it. But again, I really liked eating it, so that was my job. So it was common to go to school with fish and deer meat. Deer meat sandwich, I guess you could say. And so that the fishing, so we try to share that, with our young people with in Manitoba here, to find different water systems and take them out and give them that exposure, and so when we're there, we try to include some elders if possible, and they share more, and it's really interesting to have elders connected that grew up in this land, Manitoba being like Manitoba, they have a really good memory of these water systems, land development, and things that, even have interrupted, as we know, kind of across Turtle Island. A lot of this development of this society has interrupted a lot and affected a lot of our communities, the way in which they live, whether it's the fish that we know and some probably can't eat anymore, or whether it's the land animals, the moose, or specifically here, when I think about the moose in Manitoba, the population decline crisis, I guess, they're in, so we've had and participated in ceremonies for that. And, it's kind of relevant to our, the model when we do the hunting camp. So it's an annual thing. We teach young people about snaring rabbits, even bush chickens, they call them. But we also include the language in that, we could show you some pictures about that after, but the opportunity is for young people to have the opportunity to get out there and to really see and experience how we're given to live the best we can in this land. And it's a huge thing. Like, it's not, something like you could say, even like growing up fishing, it's not like a course or a class where you can be there from 9 and check out 2:30 or whatever it is. It's a time commitment thing, and to be out there is something really good, and it really brings us to a good place. We're able to work with young people and adults too, because it's not just for young people. Some of our parents come out, foster parents, and grandparents come out, but it's also a way to rediscover some of that meaning of what family is. And so what are our roles as parents, as uncles, as aunties, different things like that, little brother, big brother, big sister, it can have a chance to visit some of those things and the where we see some of those things just out on creation. So when we see those things, and it's never the same, like I don't know how to explain it, it's just not the same. So some things we see at certain times and some we don't. So, and that's specific to animals and behaviors, which remind us about ourselves as a reflection as we try to live, a good life, So the hunting camp, that's something, and the young people often they get to well, they take whatever home with them to feed their families. So it's really hands-on. We guide them. They set their snares. They do what they can. Um, some may shoot a chicken or rabbit too, which is fine. Then they take that home, and but they clean it. So the thing is putting that memory together is putting your hands. We have to put our hands on the stuff. It's okay. Like today is all right. We're gonna talk about it, but it's much different when you put your hands on it. And the amount of compassion, we understand the teaching and why these animals arrive and show up to us. It's truly a blessing, and specifically our young people really recognize that when we're told by one of our elders or a couple of our elders about how creation is and what our relationship is to animals and the plant life, that's there. But even more importantly to our mother the earth, where that's still spoken about, and I don't know how to say that, like renewed, I guess you could say, when we're out there. We renew that relationship constantly being out there. So our young people get to do that. And, as they start out small, and some as they get more experience with us, then they're able to, target the bigger game and maybe take home a deer, shoot their own deer, which has happened. And it's a lot of preparation, So it's this mentorship that we do helps our young people. And they certainly love being out there, and how proud they are to, even their grandparents requesting, some people don't eat rabbits anymore, but we do. They're tasty when you cook them properly. And some of our grandparents, and parents, our uncles or aunties wish for those things because that's how they grew up again. And we're kind of in this time where some of our people have not, lived that way or grown up that way, being like urban. I don't want to make a thing about it being an urban Nietzsche or urban Indian, whatever, but just not having to grow up on the reserve. It's not something, that's seen. And we've experienced that, we take fish and stuff to school, people kind of look at you different or funny, like, what is that? It's good, that's what it is. To me, but then it's like it's not something normal like someone at pizza or a Big Mac or whatever, like that's kind of different, but because they're able to do that, then bringing that to their family helps bring them together, and that appreciation, and so that encouragement they have, if you had your own grandmother and you brought her something and she really appreciated it, can really motivate you to, it gives you a good feeling, I guess you could say, and to sit down to be able to eat that, and that's the thing, is that it's really good to do that. And some, in different ways, they're able to share that. And some have to take home whatever it is that we do at the camp, that it goes to the families or community, so we're able to provide. So that's kind of our role. We talk about hunters or uncles and things like that, is to feed our families, especially at today's time where children may not have food, or things like that. So we have to keep working at it, to look after them the best we can. And that's like sharing that, sharing our blessings, and reestablishing some of those societies where men and women would get together to do that. So it's not like just the men go out and do it. Communities have their own way in which they do it, which is fine. But the way that we do it is pretty a lot of consultation with the ladies, elder ladies in the community, to support the movement and moving forward with these camps. And that means they even send us with bannock. I'm not a bannock maker, sorry. But to have that, even to support that work that's going to happen, like there's not just us as men or whatever, there's still the other part, the partnership with the ladies and their work to ensure that life flows forward for our children. And so the young people certainly benefit a lot from that, and older people who may have not experienced it too, because we have young men, who've never had to do it. Myself, not being able to do some things too. It's such a good rewarding feeling. You know what I mean? So, but it's a lot of learning. But like anything, got to be willing to put yourself and do the work, despite all the elements that are out there. The weather, the heartbreak when they get away. Oh man. I could have, and you hear the best hunting stories ever. Which is all, it's fun too. It doesn't have to be like that serious. But that's kind of some of the highlights, I guess you could say. And then, we got to speak to how we would honor young people too, like pre-COVID, which is a real thing nowadays, unfortunately. But pre-COVID, after the camp, when we had young people harvest something, we would send some of that food back, and then the ladies and families would meet on the community and prepare a feast. And so we'd honor those young boys that are, usually in their teens, to start to still show them and build them up to be what that good man is to be. So even with our own sons, we've done that and continue to do that, as they grow. But taking time to recognize that work, even though it may be, a small thing, maybe people, it's a small thing, but it makes a big difference in young people's lives, because they remember that, and it's something that they have ownership over. They've done it themselves. We did our part, but like in life, they have to take part in that. And so some of that experience in that we still research and consult elders, which kind of leads to the next kind of thing we're involved with, the language camps, is even naming the animals and breeds and stuff like that. So some of the animals you might get is a Bene, which is referred to as the rough grouse and Anishinaabe one, um, or partridge. Sometimes they call it too, depending on the area. Mushko de say, I think, is a new one we learned, was the spruce grouse, and then the last one is Oshkoke, which is the sharp tail. So there's 3 types of breeds of chicken, and that we target anyway, and that we see in this area. And so we try to remember their names the best we can. And again, some of the things we try not to waste, and some of the things kids want to keep stuff, which is fine, it's good. And so that's, the language thing, which, and myself, I guess you could say, we've been trying to learn language for a long time, even in my community, in our dialect, Lanape, which is Algonquin speaking, it's a bit older. And it has very similar words to Cree, just so you know, and Ojibwe. But the more east you go out, it's also learning about our culture, our tribes, and what that nationhood means. So language is something that really, for me and many, what we see with the young people, helps motivate and give us our good mental health, I guess you say, overall. But also it's a very spiritual language as well. It's something, again, that's been here for since in our creation story. It's been there with us. It didn't come from anywhere else. So our sound and who we are is very, very unique. And so we try to do our best to put those things together. And specifically, I guess, for the agency, we try to make age appropriate activities, coloring books, introductions, and we try to recognize each community by their name as well. So it's a lot of work. It's a busy work, but it's a good work, and that's kind of the time that we're in, is to do and try to support a lot of these initiatives that are going on with some of our communities anyway. Does that answer your question?
Beautifully. Donna, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, when we had a session on the berry fast, we had a lot of our viewers asking questions. What about our young men, our boys becoming young men, and what do we have for them, and the roles of parents and of fathers, uncles in ceremonies like the berry fast for the young women. So they were really curious to know more about the relationship between men and our young people as they're growing up. Could you speak to that on a little bit?
Yeah, specific with the berry fast, it's the women's, thing for sure. However, it does not exclude men, when they're welcoming, um, and supporting, I have lots of nieces as well. So, I mean, being a good uncle means to look after them. But when they're going through that change, um, we have kids, obviously. Well, now I have daughters, so there's times you can play, hold them on our lap, blah, 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 when they're young. But when that time changes and their body changes, then that kind of, we don't do that no more. It's not to be, that there's anything wrong, but it's about respect, that they're trying to figure things out and that change is going to happen and how it is to be an uncle. But you can still be, a good way, with them without doing so much, I don't know about dad because I'm just have a new daughter now, so we'll figure that out. You know what I mean? But for being an uncle, then it's different things, talk to them, because there's things that as parents, and then for my children too, they got to talk to their uncles about, I can't do everything. I'm just, I'm the dad, and it's like any child. You can listen to your parents so much, yeah, da, 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 but then when it comes from uncles, things like that, it's more meaningful, and they need to have the outlet. So listening as an uncle, is really, really important, and doing things, with them, recognizing them in a good way. I could tell you the berry fast, my niece, and I was really proud of her. We went out just, to the mall, and kids, I had all the kids, I take them wherever, just hang out with the kids, and then they wanted to get a frozen yogurt fruit, I think it was called. Used to be in the mall anyways, and so get whatever you want, kids, like, just have a treat, whatever. And it's like, oh, I can't have berries. Like, my niece said that. Like, oh, I felt real bad because I forgot she was on it very fast. So I was like, okay. So what we're gonna do, we're all gonna just have chocolate with her, So not to, what I mean, put it in her face and sort of thing like that, but show our support that we're with her and recognize what she's going through, that sort of thing. And so my boy, my oldest, and his cousin grouping in his age, they did that and he understood that, so, and they talk about that, as kids, amongst themselves. And we're really proud of them. We tell them that every now and then, even though your kids, they think they don't listen sometimes, but they pay attention to that. And it means something, even though they just say, okay, which is fine, it just, it's something new, but, give them some good support. And so on, even with the welcoming into the berry breaking ceremony, then men uncles are to be there to witness that as well. And so when she's announced as what we know as a skinny clay, as that new young woman, then our role is more important to be a good uncle, to look after, just her, to guide her through. She's not Anishinaabe clay yet, which is a whole nother, we talk about language, there's stages of life that they go through, but later on, but she still needs help and guidance, and so that's something that we're not to do, not to be mean to them, but just like, care and support them, and have fun too. It's not like just, but there are different, boundaries that, like, at least in our family we set, like, I don't, lift them up anymore, things like that, like when they're at that age, or treat them as they are, like a Anishinaabe clay sort of thing. So and then Ben too, like the boys for teenage men, moving into manhood. There are a few different things that are done. I know it may not be as elaborate as, say the berry fast and things like that, but the role of being a man that's now been NA is a little bit different. And how we learn more about that again is going through similar things. One is to provide, but one of the most important ones is to be able to connect and learn how to sit with our grandfather's fire at ceremony, and support that work. Like, I mean, it's so much to it, and it's amazing. Like, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to know the different kinds of trees and wood, stuff like that, to build a fire, to care for it overnight. It's a great honor to be able to do that, and so young people can do that, and uncles can help get the young people to do that. So when we're at camp, we have to go get our wood at hunting camp and stuff, and those boys, they really enjoy doing that. They like splitting wood. All right, saves my back. but again, it's part of learning what that work and earning what that life is, you know. And boys too, they have the opportunity to go and fast, and each one is different. It's not a set thing, you know. So I don't want to exclude people who don't have these opportunities, but for different people have different ways to mark those times in their life. So as teenage men or boys, young boys, they typically then go sit on their mother's lap, you know, sit at the earth, and they fast too and sit about creation, and then have that time to reflect on what that is, you know, to be a man. And especially our boys who, you know, at least my boys who hunt and things like that, to give thanks for life, and to do that sometimes even before they go hunt, you know. So those are different things, but recognizing, you know, that part where they are, you know, even with the boys, they're not Giwazants no more, you know, like just like the girls are Quazants, then they turn to Oshkinikwe, Oshkinine, which is the young man, and what that means. And it's hard to, you know, gotta be patient with them too. They don't know things yet, you know. Yeah, they're big, maybe sometimes. And my son's taller than me, but you know, it's still recognizing that he's still young, and you tell him the mind where that's where they are, which is fine, you know. But to recognize again at that time where with him, he was recognized at that time in his life when he got his first deer, and you know, things like that. And he dragged deer out himself, which is another, I don't want to say it's not like ego thing, but a manly thing. It feels good to be able to do that. Last year he did that, so you know, and he puts his hand on, you know, the work, and it's recognized that can he, you know, provide, you know, and that's something that's really important for our young men to be able to do that. And sometimes it's difficult, you know, in this time because of the society we live in. It's just like, well, graduate, you're 18, oh, you're a man now, or you're a woman now. Well, it's not necessarily work like that, you know. Some of us take longer, you know, in reality to get there, to feel confident and say, yeah, I'm a man or a woman. And it takes time to understand the definition of that for ourselves too, as we keep learning, you know. So for boys, there's things like that. And also even in, we can see that evidently where it's more of a bigger thing, like in the powwow trail, like where people are dancers, they move through categories, they have an honoring when they move from boys to teens to adulthood, you know. So even with that, it's evident where you could see that, and they typically have an uncle or someone that mentorship still happens, you know, for that next part. So intimately within families, it's uncles that kind of recognize that about young people, and parents too, you know that. But some of that we have to leave, you know, for uncles to do. So my boys, I have to ask uncles to take them out fasting. I can't do it. I can't watch them. If I do, then I'll go and bring them out if they say they're hungry. It's just a parental thing, I guess. So it's kind of one of the harder things to do. Just, you know, let the children go, and it's not trust the uncles. It's our own personal thing, because the way I might want to do it might not be the way it needs to be done, you know, sort of thing. So I don't know if that answers it kind of a bit.
Uh-huh. I would say for your question, Donis. So you talked a little bit about mentoring and teaching relationships. And I was wondering who your teachers were. Who are some of the people that you looked up to when you were young or continue to look up to today?
There's quite a bit, I guess you could say. Like, but I often think about that, you know. There's not one specific person, you know. I've been really fortunate, or I've been able to meet a lot of people, and in my community, where, you know, I could still go there, but it's not a problem to be there. But still remember those older people that I grew up with that aren't here, meaning like they're like the grandmothers or the grandfathers of families, you know. And it kind of depends though too, because some mentored in certain ways and some did other things. So it's not like there was one, I don't know how to say it, like one that knew all and did all sort of thing, I guess you could say. Because each part of them, you know, was a part of me, I guess, yeah, you know, in reality. So I have my mother, of course, and then who raised me, you know, but I also had uncles who stepped in because my father wasn't there, you know. So I have 6 uncles, and each one of them have a really important role. So specifically, just growing up, I've had that opportunity where, you know, I've been around them and they've taken me to do things. You know, whether it was to cut a steak, to fillet a fish. One of my first roles, my uncle Charlie specifically was who I spent a lot of time with and lived with, was to, you know, how to fillet fish and sit there at the river, you know, go to school. So how to work hard, but listen to people. But then he also extended when I was with him with different elders in the community. You know, like there was Stella Stonefish. We spent a lot of time with her. Like she's gone now. My grandmother, you know, I even had a chance to spend time with my great grandmother, you know, here in language. Coach, our coach back home. I wasn't too much into sports back then because whatever, just wasn't my thing, but I tried anyway. But Daryl Stonefish, so a male coach, taught me about baseball. I'm not, you know, I could still play it. I'm not like horrible at it, but but maybe ask him. I don't know. He would know. But having that, you know, with the boys, then my cousins, older cousins, and you know who you look up to, because I was the older out of my siblings, right? So I didn't have an older brother, so kind of look at that, you know, and within the family and the community, and then different people, you know, some of the more traditional people was like John Jacobs used to pick us up and be a good advocate with young people. He worked a lot with medicines and things like that. Different speakers of our language, you know, even the older ones, like there's a gentleman, English White Eye, he spoke language, and you know, he cut wood till he's 85 or something like that, I remember. Richard Snake was a big influence for me. We adopted him as a grandfather, so he was one of the last male speakers of our language back home. Glenn Jacobs, and these are a lot of people that, you know, I think about them, they're gone on, but we try to honor what they shared, you know, and different men in our community, like some of my cousins that, you know, took me aside when I was a teenager to teach me about smudging, sweetgrass, you know, taking me to communities and go to sweat, you know, different things like that. And you know, and it kind of depends on the realm, because whether it's education, and we had other counselors and people talk to us about education, but then fishing, there's certain guys that know. And 2 of my uncles really took me out was my uncle, well, 3 of them. Uncle Gordy, he fished lots. He's the one that brought me to Midewiwin Lodge. My uncle Charlie spent a lot of time with fishing, of course, and you know, living. And then my other uncle Kenny, he's the oldest uncle, and he's the one that took me to go boat fishing and getting up early in the morning to go. I didn't even know where we went, but this is out in the Great Lakes, so that's a big water. I go on the boat. I remember as a kid, and there's only water around. And the big waves riding back, I don't know, but you know, when you're a kid, that's what it was, and that was in the 80s. So you know, so those men, I say specifically, took me out to do things. My uncle Dan who stayed with us, very kind, you know. All these guys, like my uncles, are really kind to me, you know. So that's how I know how to be, you know, an uncle, you know, I guess you could say, like them. And my uncle Keith, the other one, taught me about putting together my hockey net, my first hockey net.
I love that you said all of your teachers were a part of you. I love that you said that, and it just made me think of how knowledge is passed down from teacher to teacher to teacher, and everything that you share with the kids that you work with is going to be with them too. So I just loved the visual that I got from that. So we also, I want to open it up to Noah first, because I know Noah had a question before I move on. So I'll pass it on to Noah to ask a question.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, because you're talking about some of the language camps that you do and are mentoring in, and how important it is that some of the young people are picking up the language and everything. And I I've always thought you're such a beautiful Anishinaabe speaker, and I was just wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about, like, did you go to anything that were kind of like language camps, or how is it that that you were able to pick up so much Anishinaabe?
Well, it's quite the whole nother story with language, but briefly, I'll go over it real quickly. I could say like growing up in school, and there's a huge debate. Honestly, language. We grew up English. I heard our language a little bit growing up with like my grandfather and other speakers. Of course, being young with them, they would just kind of talk amongst themselves, you know, because kids they don't think listen or whatever, but they're able to hear it. And overcoming that, you know, where they were just residential school survivors. They were the World War II veterans. They were the ones that were 60 soup survivors, and so language wasn't cool then, you know, for them, and they didn't want us to feel a certain way because whatever. But there's always some, you know, speakers that we heard. Just maybe one of the last generation that was able to hear those first language speakers, but wasn't talked to like directly, and just words here and there. They would tease us, you know. For example, koosh koosh is what my grandma would tease us little kids, you know, which is what they say pig is, you know, whatever, little piggies or something. But it wasn't the only words we heard. So having that, you know, experience, and then the big debate like now with people is second language, third language, you know, and just I have to credit some of it to not necessarily French, but being able to, I took class and I just, you know, able to learn it, you know, pretty good. So I took that to grade 11 advanced, you know, I can understand it. Speaking so much, I haven't really, you know, practiced a lot speaking with someone, but for years it can understand. It really helped me to understand language structures and things like that, masculine, feminine, you know, sort of thing like that. However, growing up in my community, they had language classes. There was no such thing as in class language sessions yet. So again, this is the 80s, 90s, early 90s. So in our community center I used to develop, Lake Glen Jacobs started to have language classes, and we used to go as much as we could. And then we'd do the whole repeat, gave us notebooks, notes, and I didn't know what double vowel was in or anything like that, you know. So I'm like, just try to remember words. Cool. Tyndall is how we'd say fire. Kshotao is tobacco. So just learning different words back then. Again, building that. And so, you know, of course, about 18 years old, I guess I stopped, you know, doing young people stuff, meaning back then as I stopped drinking, you know, stuff like that, you know, and really focused on it. So in my community, we had a library, and Daryl, again, our you know, my baseball coach, he was the librarian at the time. But there was someone, John O'Mara, he did a dictionary about our language, and there's a huge dictionary, like it's like this thing. And in the library, they had all kinds of tapes. So the cassette tapes, and there's no, it had to listen to over and over, rewind. So I just listened to tapes in the library. That's where I spent a lot of my time in the library. And try to write the words so phonetically. So this is a whole other thing with double vowel and whatever syllabics or people want to write is fine. Wherever you're at, use what you know, and that's what I did. So I didn't know anything about double vowel system, how to read the thing. I just went by, okay, I heard the word. I'm pretty good at listening, whether people want to believe it or not. So I remember the word, I would try to find it in a dictionary, and then that's kind of how I figured out the vowels a bit. And then also that process though, consulting with, like I said, the speakers in my community, and resources that were done. Also want to mention the lady Diana Snake, she also did a lot for our community with language. So consulting with them, I get the book, and of course when you're just learning the language, it's rough. Like honestly, nobody's laughing at you, but it just sounds, something doesn't sound like smooth, I guess you could say. Just that's the way it is. Other than a few words, they say "kwachiki," which is kind of like, oh my god, something like, every community's got their own slang that they got really good, because you hear it lots. But anyways, so going to that, no formal school, like really like accreditation for languages, the simple, well, I want to learn more about what it was. And part of that sparked in visiting to the lodge and understanding, like with my uncle who taught me about language a bit, and wonder what they wanted to say, or what I want to know what they were saying, in ceremony sort of thing, what they're singing about. So the commitment to learn as much as I could, I did that, and then after a few years, got pretty good at, you know, our language. Not saying I'm fluent, but I can understand quite a bit. And, you know, when the elders speak and ask you to do things, and it's okay. You're okay, I guess you could say, you know. So I never did anything unless they asked to do things, you know. And after that, then I just started learning, you know, Anishinaabe one. Actually, it's required language camp booklet is where I first started learning about ceremonial Anishinaabe one, that dialect. And just list it over and over. But some of the words, like I said, there's similarities. So within our dialect, is very similar. And also consulting with late Richard Snake, who went to the lodge at one time to go see about the ceremony. And I asked him, could he understand what they were saying? He's like, yeah, I can understand like some of it, you know what I mean? So then there's the validation for the language and how they're connected amongst each other, you know. And language, when you, it's really intriguing. That really opened my mind, I guess you could say, and how people thought and described things, and hearing the laughter and the tapes that they had in the center, and what they're trying to explain. You know, I think this guy with John O'Mara is a non-Indigenous guy, but the way he would talk things, like we don't even think like that. But the questions he asked me, why it just sounded funny to them, I guess you could say. So learning book, repetition, you know, writing systems, all that crash course sort of thing over time before the internet, because that wasn't existent at the time. Maybe there was Hotmail, whatever, but you know, then actually going, our first experience was 2002, I want to say. We went to a language camp at Yosemite Red Gut First Nation with Nancy Jones, who's a really well-known speaker, and Dennis and Dan Jones as well, her children, and we're out on the land. And so that was our first experience of actually being at a language camp, where it's kind of immersion based. So you do the best you can to pick up words, and you're encouraged really well to do that. And then later on, after years, we tried to attend another couple camps that were held by the late Eddie Benet in Wisconsin, with his language camps as well. And of course, just being around, you know, for me, just being around as much speakers as I can, spending time with them, you know, because again, it's just listening how they phrase things, you know, and practice them. And practice the language, even if you don't feel smooth, I guess you could say, or you sound choppy, it's okay, because you'll get there. You know, you just gotta keep going at it, you know, because it's more fun to talk to people than in front of a mirror. And you know, and sometimes we mispronounce words, even still to this day, mispronounce words. It's okay. I just laugh at, oh, okay, you want okay, you know. So I mean, that's kind of the transition, you know, and learning those in language. Just the realm of language learning is its own thing, you know. It's being able to connect that, you know, and like I said, it's just something. I think it's a skill to learn structure. I think is really good. Anishinaabe or Indigenous language is not masculine, feminine. It's more animate and inanimate, and understanding the persons, because the same persons that in our dialect is the same as in Anishinaabe one, meaning the 7 persons. It's pretty. I don't know if it's universal with all languages, but that's kind of it where it is. And then I grew up around, you know, Longhouse people as well, 6 Nations, and I hear some of their words, but it's not as connected as I guess Algonquin speaking, you know. But how they talk about things and tending things with them growing up, and like Southwestern Ontario is always good, you know, to have that good support. So I guess that answers your question. And we try to support, you know, language camps. I think are great, you know, but again, it's just something to help enhance learning, you know. And Roseau just had one not too long ago. I didn't have a chance to go, but you know, it was really good. And the young people there, again, sometimes we don't think they're listening, man, they remember a lot.
That's awesome. Miigwech.
You remember that one time? Yeah.
I know too, some of the children in our community, or I guess they were children then, they remember the camp that you were at in Roseau, and just learning each other's names in Anishinaabe one. They still talk about that.
Yeah, that was summer 2005. We're able to go and host on the land. Jibashko Roseau Rapids, at a wigwam, and then many speakers in the community, some who aren't there, like the late Ron Littlejohn. He's a really good speaker, really loved the language, and came out. Mario Wasikisik was also there as our young speaker, because he grew up in a first speaking community, so he's a first language speaker. But again, he was really helpful, and we just really did our best to try and have that. We'd have the charts and things like that, but if they wanted to go swimming, that was the one term that they learned the most was, I want to go swimming. So they had to say the language. and we about dinner or something like that. I don't remember because I didn't swim because I was busy cooking and doing things. But again, like arranging to have, just to arrange and coordinate to have, what's the goal, who can we get to help fit certain things, and Ron was really good even just with enunciation, because when there's first language speakers, they can tell if you're not a first language speaker just the way we say things, because we're still a bit robotic and trying to enunciate every word the way, or syllable or consonant the way it's in the written. But when you hear it, it's like it doesn't even sound like that. Well, how do you write it? And that's always a dilemma when you're learning. But it's fun, once you master it, you like feel like the best. Oh yes, I need a reward, so I'm going to go to McDonald's or something. I don't know. Whatever your reward is for you, then do it. And it's something to really reflect back, and think about those things. But then again, if young people see you doing it, then they too maybe will want to do that. But we really need to be inclusive of our young people, because they're truly the ones that will remember, not just have on a poster, but we have all the confidence and we witness it, at these camps that we do, whether it's fishing or hunting. I mean, they're beginning, they're kind of shy, don't want to pick up something, but now some of them are at a point where they remember how to skin the deer all themselves, or clean the chicken all themselves, or the rabbit, So once they get that, the next part of it is, well, how do you cook it? Which we do as well, like with drying the meat and things like that too, smoked meat, which we did at this camp, which was amazing. So I mean, smoked fish, so there's different things that there's always something, I think about this growing up when we used to hear, oh, you're bored. Well, there's always something to do. You can do something. So I wasn't allowed to be bored. Otherwise, I got put to work, and here's the mop, and go clean the kitchen floor or something. I don't know. We didn't have the internet, like I said. I couldn't sit there, But again, like it's just something to keep working at, and that's something just being, what we call Midewiwin, or a helper, to help out, just to do our role and what capacity it might be is to help align and educate people on what they can do. And what we find and we see success and sharing that and borrowing some things from others, like with the camp that we experience, we try to give that as much as we can to the other young people and how it worked, So it was really, really comforting, like I said, I've been able to meet a lot of good people, be Shkabeos to, the lodge and through fires, Roseau and Midewiwin, to participate in, longhouse ceremonies with my friends, social dances. And growing up in Vancouver also too, where my mom, not my mom, my dad's mom is Wet'suwet'en. So being able to attend potlatch, they call it potlatch ceremonies and things like that. The community centers in the 80s and social nights was really, really important to me, because some of those things I saw as a young person, like I'm talking about 5, 6 years old, I do a lot of those things now. I mean, I dress up, I still dance, I still sing, so things like that, So just having those opportunities for some reason, been able to, be lucky enough to be where I am because of those things, So.
That's awesome. Did you have some pictures you wanted to show of the camps?
Let's see.
Because I want to see them.
Yeah. Well, we have to, like in today's time, we'll go through briefly. It's not meant to be about me, but again, because we work with young people, there's a privacy thing, so we can't show, our children. but all we could express mostly is like how awesome it is for them, you know, to be there. So again, I hope you can see the screen, but
Yeah, I can see it.
okay. So we start here. So again, we talk a little bit about men, being a man. A man, you gotta talk like a man. Just kidding. Can't be that serious. Go on now. But be at the Ishkode. Oops, I didn't mean to. Okay, so first of all, we call our camps in the Yandan. I can't even read enough. And the Wenjigamen, Yandan Wenjigamen. That's what we call that though. So how we look after and feed family. So it's not like the sport recreational hunting. That's the huge difference, you know, because a lot of people today's society think of it as a sport or recreation. We feed our families and community members. So kind of talked about that. And so our language again is Shkode. Fire is essential at the center of our hunting camp. So participants identify trees, wood, and learn the skills of building a campfire. So whether it's wigwas, tig, you know, the wigwas, the birch bark, you know, birch bark tree, walk, the pine, or mashkud, I call it mashkigwatig, tamarack, you know, Saudi tig, like, you know, to identify what those are is important, you know, and learn the terminology. And of course, aki is understanding and developing a relationship with the earth, um, and how our origins with and the value of Anishinaabe people, and taking it back. You know, if we can imagine what the world was like before, you know, the civilization we have, you know, which would have been just amazing, you know, and think about that in our creation story. We're able to hear about that, and songs are sung about that, you know, so really, it's a really good time to just be there, you know, to be, well, there's a certain calmness that you can just be out there, you know. And I don't mean going through like the city bush, city park bush. I mean going out on the actual original land. So here we have this is a Kionene, one of the elders that guides us, teach us, mentorships us, is and women, like setting snares for rabbits. So that's something that we do teach them. And so warning, this is what it looks like when you lift them up. Obaninanik Wabuzuk, which means we're lifting rabbits, or not the Guayman, like we check the snares. So sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. So there's a famous person on the right there that got our first rabbit. And she fed her family with that. And again, Yizananik Shkodeng, cooking over the fire, even how to prepare. That's our son. It's there. He cleaned it and he cooked it and he fed everyone. He's the one handing it out to everyone. You know, so don't be shy. Come and eat. You know, it's something in our family, our community. If you're gonna come visit, you gotta eat. So we have visitors that come to camp, and we feed them. You know, so that's, you're not gonna leave hungry. Boschke is a gun, so we kind of go over gun safety if they're old enough. You know, some of them are not there yet, which is fine, but for the ones that are, then we have mentors. So this is Andrew. He's one of the mentors, the hunters from the community. So that's the other thing within the role and my work is to build capacity. So help, you know, recognize young people in the community to pick up in these roles. So and we just kind of guide them on what it is that we're doing, you know. And again, we named, this one is Benet, the rough grouse. Well, it's not mine, this is, I had to change the picture again for privacy's sake. So that's what it looks like. And the other one that got away is called Apane. That means he's gone. So you got to get your words right. That's what Bill would tell us. Apane or Bene. What did you get? And then so they learn Yoshbinanik, they're plucking them, or Ibinanik, like they put their hands and clean the bird. So whatever it is, they have a chance to do that. So I teach them that. And this one here is Wawashkeshi. So again, when we get one and we show them how to gut it, all that sort of thing, they help out. And eventually, like our young people now, some of them are pretty good where they do it themselves. kabakanik, which is like they're just skinning it. So that's what they do. So they put their hands on the work. We guide them, and they do a lot of it. And this is oops, kadosujananik. It's like cutting up and sharing the edible parts. So again, we try to use many parts that we can. This is one of our other hunters that we have, Kyle. And my son wanted to, you can eat the tongue too, just so you know. Some people don't, like again, they don't take all the parts and eat them all, you know. We try to use as much as we can. People ask in the community yet for the heart, the liver, even the kidneys, things like that. People still eat, you know. And this is Midewiwin. So these are medicines that are out there available. And Donna's went and harvested this time. I think that's your magic harvesting hands. And went and made tea. So there's natural teas out there that our people ate, and well, not ate, but they drank year round. And so that's the typical what it looks like. Do some like just visiting around the fire. So those are some of the things that we do, or kind of modernize. Sometimes we have teepees and A-frames and things like that. But again, it depends on how long that we're out there. So again, we work together in Roseau with Jordan's principal, with Kirby Nelson, and the cultural component there in the wellness center. So the community there works together as much as they can with each part. And even at this most recent one, they had a high school or young person that's getting their cultural exploration credit for being out there, which is pretty amazing. You know, so good recognition by education and supporting some of these initiatives, you know. So that's kind of where we're at today with these things. You know, we would like to have people to, you know, we do have pictures, but again, it's young people of children in care, and you know, we can't share those things online. So, you know, we'll just have those ones we can do. But you can imagine, you know, how happy they are, and they get to hold the animal, and they say, "Oh, it's so soft," and they appreciate it, you know, things like that. But there's not fear; they overcome it. They understand how much of a blessing that is. And so at this time, we've had day camps for young people for 12 and under, just going over some of the basics and setting snares and stuff. We have 40 visitors that always come visit us with families all together. We've had a teen girls camp as well, just the girls, the ladies get to go out. And then we just recently finished a teen boys camp where we had 12, but we can only take 6 max at a time, you know, because there's safety and things like that to consider. So, you know, they have a good time. And that's something we continue to work at and support other communities looking development. And that's kind of what people are moving towards more now, I guess you could say, is land-based knowledge or education. But you have to be there, you have to go out. And I'm sorry, we can't record everything, you know, it's just some things are meant for you, and it's okay to detach from this cyber world for a while and make a TikTok about it later.
Kaden. Well, those are beautiful photos. Those are awesome. And was that Donis with the rabbit? I didn't catch that.
was
Donis na? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. I'll have to
Yeah.
look at that one later. So we're a little over time, but we do have one question from Facebook. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have, do you have any advice for those just beginning to learn the language, or what's the best advice you've ever been given?
Well, for me, I would just say keep practicing, you know. I think part of it too is also like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like if you're learning language, even one word, I would encourage you and I applaud any learner to pick up a word or two here and there, whether Indigenous or non-Indigenous. It's something that is so critical as far as our language being used and transmitted. The more we have, I think is really, really important. More advocates in that way. But also, I think understanding your learning style too is really, really important. for me, I listen to people. Like I said, I actually do listen. That's how I learn. But some people are very linear, or I don't know, just got to see it written first, and they can put it in their head somehow. So there's all kinds of different ways of learning, but immerse as much as possible. Even if you don't understand some of the things, maybe you'll catch it later, because there's many interviews today I still listen to. I don't get some of the words, but there's some words I'll catch, and I'll ask someone, what does that mean? So whatever reason, sometimes that word might stick, and then it's just a way to build up. And for first language, like if you're just starting to learn, for me, I would say really understanding structure was probably the most helpful in learning language. And that's true whether it was French, masculine, feminine, and the same with Anishinaabe one, Lanape, understanding 7 principles or 7 persons, and animate and animate, because that word changes with something that's living or not. And it's like, well, and I'd always ask, why is that? That's the same word. No, it's something different. Right? So be patient with yourself, you know, and we all go through that, you know, and I still do this day with myself, and, you know, we're going to make mistakes, but all those mistakes lead to better pronunciation, enunciation, memories, and a lot of good laughs. So hopefully you're enjoying the learning with it, because I certainly enjoy even making mistakes.
Halfway.